Hello, we are going to look at Cloudflare Worker today and use it as a proxy. It's an edge function provided by Cloudflare, just like Versa's edge function, AWS's Lambda function, Azure's Azure function, etc. We'll be using Cloudflare Worker to proxy a website to fetch its content from origin and manipulates it, or in other words, optimizes it before served to the end user/browser. And we are going to be using airbnb.ae as an example, but in your case, you can proxy your own domain. So let's have a look. First of all, we are going to initiate a new Wrangler project by executing the Wrangler command and give it a name proxy worker for now. You can give it any name. It's going to ask a few questions like if you want to add it to Git. Not just yet. Yes, I want to have package.json. I don't want to use TypeScript, use a usual fetch handler. No, I don't want any test to be done. It's going to take a while, store all the required packages and dependencies. Once this is done, let's head over to VS Code. Let's open up the project. As you can expect, it's a pretty straightforward project here. First thing I always like to change is to change it to the scripts, one of the scripts to dev, because it's going to be dev server, not the actual production server. Secondly, let's take a look at the source index file. Let's clean it up real quick. And I have a bunch of code ready to be copy pasted from the other window of mine. I'm going to actually walk you through one by one how it's going to work. As you know, we are going to actually proxy the Airbnb website. So we want to actually inline all the CSS is using. So let's use the regex for the CSS is currently downloading. You have seen it already. And the cache is actually the Cloudflare workers cache, which is a default cache. If you're running the under the dev domain they have, it's going to be shared cache across all the different websites people are using. If you're on a pro version, on a paid tier, you're going to have your own private cache. It totally depends on you. And both of these things will be utilized later on, as you see. Next thing, we're going to have two piece of lines. These are really important. We're going to make sure that we use the original URL and make the URL object, and we make sure that we append that path to proxy it to a different website, because we'll be hitting our own Cloudflare URL, not the Airbnb URL directly, of course. If we are doing it, we have to make sure that our worker goes behind the scenes and requests the actual website's pages and assets from the actual origin, which is airbnb.ae. Once that's done, we're going to make sure that if the requested asset is actually the page, not the CSS or JavaScript or any other third-party URL. We're going to have the definition of this function fairly shortly. Actually, even if you move on, before we move on, let's use that function to be defined here. So what we are doing is, based on the request, we are making sure first the method is actually get. Secondly, it's accepting the text HTML. So we are making sure there is no other asset being requested right now. It's the HTML page, and also making sure that we do not include any CSS, JavaScript, or AJAX calls in here, because we want to make sure it's a page request for now. Once that's figured out, we're going to actually go ahead and fetch it with our own URL we have defined, which is prepending the domain name here, because we don't want to make a loop of our own worker process here. If anything else has been requested, we're going to actually go ahead with the normal fetch. Moving on, we also want to make sure that we process that return HTML. Now that return HTML comes here, whatever that looks like. Once that's done, we have to actually use the HTML rewriter from Cloudflare Worker. By the way, this is already only available within the workers. You can't use it outside of Cloudflare workers. And I want to actually parse through the entire HTML body and look for any possible link tags. Within those link tags, actually it's going to iterate through all those link tags found in the HTML body. And within those nodes, I'm checking get attribute href. If href is defined, if the URL contains this domain, which is the external css is downloading, and if the url consists .css somewhere in there, make sure you download it and do a small fix, normalize the url if needed, and fetch the asset, which we're gonna take a look at the definition in a while. And the css is downloaded. We're going to make sure that that specific node, which was originally the links tag itself with the href defined, we're going to replace it with the inline styles in here. It actually saves the HTML request, HTTP request for there. This is our whole purpose here. Now moving on, what this fetch asset is all about. This is the function which we have defined here to make sure we download the asset using the proper user agent and the forwarded connecting IP from the end user, from the browser. And we make sure we capture all of that and we forward it to the original request to get the CSS, JavaScript, or whatever it is, because who knows, your assets might be having cross-origin protection. So you want to make sure that your website, your fetch request actually behaves like or impersonates like the real browser here. And we have a couple of other functions here which actually behind the scenes uses cache, because this function, let me just quickly scroll through and highlight it for you. It uses, based on the user agent, it uses a cache key to make sure it's caching all the URLs if needed on Cloudflare Worker. If you don't have that Cloudflare Worker cache available, it's gonna just ignore it. So whether you have it on a paid tier or a free tier, is gonna work on both scenarios for you. With that done, hopefully all of our code will run and it's gonna actually give you the Airbnb website, but this time your CSS should be inline. So let's have a look. We'll quickly head towards the terminal and go into this proxy worker folder and make sure our dev server is running. Once this is up and running, we can open one of the URLs into the browser. Voila. So you can see the Airbnb website is being proxied on our local URL. We haven't implemented anything. What we are doing is proxying our local URL onto the Airbnb, and it is behaving as if we are the Airbnb websites ourselves. But what different here is, if you go back to inspect element and have a look at the CSS they have in the header somewhere, and you can quickly look for worker, because that's the keyword we had added, and that's the comment we have added. Below is placed by worker. So this was originally the link tag there with the href defined. Now it has the inline style on there, on all expanded in here. So what actually we are trying to achieve here, and what we were originally trying to achieve, was to save our HTTP calls going on from the browser, hence making the Google PageSpeed and other tools happier. And this is what we have achieved using Google Cloudflare workers. Now it's really powerful. You can do a bunch of other stuff. For example, inlining all of your JavaScript, your prefetching your fonts, CSS, for example, Material UI or Google Fonts as well. You can do much more than this. You can manipulate the DOM elements as if you're changing the headers, adding more security, caching layer, appending the meta tags or changing the meta tags, or even adding the header tags in terms of cache control. You can do a lot more than that. So hopefully we'll be doing it in the future videos as well.